Goal 2.
The Croatian defenders lined up in a wall, following the shouted instructions of their goalkeeper. The young player waited calmly with his foot on the ball, gesturing to his teammates to take up positions of their own. When the referee blew his whistle, it looked for a moment as though the player would go for a cross. But then, effortlessly, and off just a couple of strides, he aimed for the goal. The ball curved around the wall and powered into the net, giving the stranded goalkeeper no chance. "Bloody hell," whispered Glenn, before he realized he was spontaneously applauding. He walked up to the coach. "Did you teach him to do that?" The coach grinned through tobacco-stained teeth. "God taught him to do that." The Americanitos came ambling toward their bus in 2s and 3s, chatting about the game, the goals, the missed chances, the ruthless play of some of the opposition. The star player was alone, his shoes with their distinctive red and yellow laces slung around his neck. Glenn went straight up to him. "You played a blinder." "A what?" "You played very well," said Glenn with a smile. "Brilliant." He held out his hand. "I'm Glenn Foy. I used to play a bit myself." As they shook hands, Glenn nodded toward the shoes. "What's with the laces?" The young player looked a little embarrassed. "For my mother, the colors of Spain." "Oh, right. Still live there, does she?" "I don't know where she lives." He obviously wanted to change the subject. "So, where did you play?" "England." "England? You played for England?" Glenn laughed. "No, lad, I played in England. Have you ever thought of turning pro?" Most of the Americanitos had climbed onto the bus, and some were staring out through the dusty windows, wondering what was going on. "Pro teams here go for college kids. None of us went to college." "It's usually exactly the opposite in England. Don't get many university graduates in the Premier League." "Look, I bumped into a British agent I know on the flight out here. I'm gonna get him to check you out." He saw the player's doubtful look. "I'm serious. I think you're worth it. I was a scout for 4 years after I stopped playing, so I know what I'm talking about." The bus driver had started up the engine, and the team coach appeared on the steps. "Hey, Santiago, come on! Some of us have homes to go to." "Santiago," said Glenn. "Santiago who?"
Muñez. It's Santiago Muñez.
"And when's your next game?"
Saturday.
"Then I'll see you Saturday, Santiago." Beautiful young women clad in Adidas tracksuits were gliding around the open-air sky bar at the Mondrian Hotel with trays of canapés and drinks. But no one ate too much or drank too much. It was all about being there, seeing the right people, shaking the right hands, being seen. Barry Rankin was always highly visible, almost as high profile as some of the soccer stars he represented. Barry sat at a table on the terrace overlooking the city of Los Angeles with his cell phone at one ear. He was enjoying the brunch reception thrown by Adidas to promote their new range of sportswear, even though this particular transatlantic call was to one of his more demanding and troublesome clients. "Gavin, abroad is not a good idea. Down the line, definite, but not now. Look, if you went to Real or Inter, I'd make a ton of money, right? But I won't do that. I'm putting your interests first, Gavin. I'm thinking of you." Barry was speaking to Gavin Harris, one of his top clients and a premiership player, anxious to settle a move during the transfer window. Barry listened patiently as Gavin explained exactly why he thought he should be plying his trade in La Liga. A girl carrying a tray was hovering nearby, and Barry gestured to her for another drink, only his second. He lifted a glass from the tray, took a sip, and resumed the long-distance conversation. "But think of the drawbacks, Gavin. Foreign country, foreign food, and the only foreign food you like is curry. Believe me, you won't get a good vindaloo in Madrid. Look, you've got to trust me on this. I'm on to it, and I'll have it sorted before the transfer deadline. Now I've got to go. Someone here I have to speak to. Say hello to Christina. Bye, Gavin." He ended the call and sat back in his chair. There was no one he had to speak to, but there were one or two people he wanted to have a few words with, including the blonde who had given him his drink. He stood up and was starting to stroll across the terrace when he felt a hand on one arm. "Barry, is this a good moment to talk?" Barry turned round, smiling his most welcoming smile. After all, it just might be Sir Alex Ferguson, the manager of Manchester United. It wasn't. Barry was confronted with a face he knew from somewhere back in time, though he couldn't quite put a name to that face. But the smile remained. This could be business, and Barry was always open for business. "As good a time as any, Glenn Foy." "Of course, Glenn. What are you doing out here?" "On holiday, staying with my daughter." "Nice. Having a good time? It's all a bit unreal out here, eh? La La Land." Glenn sighed. He'd had a feeling that this wasn't going to be easy. "I phoned you, remember? About the lad I saw playing. You really ought to take a look at him before you go back." "Of course I remember, Glenn, but my life's a meeting, man. I hardly have time." "He's a young Mexican kid," said Glenn quickly, unwilling to be sidetracked. "They played in second-hand strips on a pitch with gopher holes, but he was special. I'm telling you, he dazzled me, and I don't dazzle easy." Barry's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and chose to ignore the call. "There's a lot of good young kids around, Glenn, and not enough teams for them all." Glenn had been expecting this. It was time to play his trump card. "Last time I was dazzled, it was a young kid called Jermaine Defoe. My lot didn't want him, and nor did you." Barry held up both his hands. Yeah, all right, sore point. "The lad's playing at UCLA next Saturday, 2 o'clock. Will you be there?" Barry nodded, apparently convinced. "I'll be there, totally." His phone rang, and once again he looked at the screen to check on the caller. "I have to take this one, Glenn. Business." "You will?" "I'll be there. Now relax. Grab a drink. Get yourself some food. Chill."